Governor DeWine lays out his agenda. Welcome to Columbus on the Record. As some governors around the country fight culture wars and eye runs for the White House, Governor DeWine kept it pretty simple in his first State of the State address of his second term. DeWine opened his policy-heavy speech by telling lawmakers Ohio is at a time of great opportunity and great challenges.
Our future is bright, but that future will be defined by how well we educate all our children and how we tear down the barriers to their success. We are challenged as never before because at no time in our history has the full education of our children been more important.
The governor wants to spend a lot of money on education and social programs and economic development. He wants to eliminate the state sales tax on baby items, things like diapers, wipes, and car seats. He wants to give every family a $2,500 tax credit for each child. He wants to greatly expand the number of families eligible for private school vouchers. He wants to invest in mental health treatment, and he wants to help all areas of the state clean up sites to build projects like the Intel factory. Julie Carr-Smythe, this was a pretty basic policy speech. Not many bold ideas, but also ideas that would affect a lot of people.
Right. I think there are a few factors here. One is DeWine is in his last term, as you say. He's of an age where probably he's looking toward, what can he have in terms of programs as a legacy. Another thing is that he knows what's going on in the Ohio House and that probably he's going to need some Democratic votes to get some of his proposals through. And so I think he tried to balance his, maybe more aggressive conservative ideas with some very practical bipartisan ones. And
there was no talk of culture war issues, as I mentioned, no talk of gun regulations, no talk of abortion rights or abortion bans. Is that surprising?
Not really. I think the governor's stayed away, particularly when it comes to culture war issues. Like, he's kind of let the legislature bring stuff to him, but he won't really weigh in on those pieces of legislation before they get there. I also think he kind of talked about them in roundabout ways. When it comes to gun control, he talked a lot about mental health and investing in care. He gave the analogy of, rather than pulling people out of the river, we need to figure out why they're falling in. And I think he has sort of acknowledged in previous, not in this speech, but in previous conversations with the media that what's possible in terms of gun reform may be mental health care. So I think that was where he's pivoting. And when it comes to things like abortion, he talked a lot about how to make it easier to have and raise a child. And I think that was his sort of pitch, right? Like when you see making diapers more affordable, the credit, the raise in subsidized child care, he created an entirely new agency focused on early childhood education. And I think that was sort of his, I want to make it as easy as possible to have a child in Ohio.
Desiree, those are Democratic ideas. Had to be welcome to folks on that side of the aisle?
Yeah, I think it was a lot of hot air. We are bleeding people every day. People are fleeing the state because of the extreme policies coming out of the state house from these Republicans. And every single bill that has been extreme, Governor DeWine has signed, every single one. And now we're one of a few states around the country that are banning abortion and reproductive rights access for people. Well, our young people, when they graduate, are they going to stay here for family planning, or are they going to fear that they won't have access to health care? So they're leaving. They're leaving DeWine State. Yeah, but they have to attract people who want to stay here and work for Intel. Yeah.
Mike, who's going to pay for all this?
Our coffers are full. Our rainy day fund is at historic levels, and our tax receipts are good. Look, we've balanced our budget. We do every 2 years. Our Constitution requires us to, but we've been fiscally responsible. Now, look, we've had a lot of federal money come into Ohio and the 49 other states, pandemic money and other Recovery Act money, so we've been able to use that. But the governor was clear in his message that I'm not proposing a budget that's balanced based on federal money. We're going to use it for one-time purposes. Yes, we will. Why waste it, right? Why give it back? but everything that he proposed is affordable within our budget. Just want to remind my friend over here that the governor just won an election with over 63% of the vote. So Ohioans support him regardless of what he's signing. This budget it's a good start, but let's remember every 2 years when a governor introduces it, the legislature says, hey, thanks, and then they write their own. So off we go.
The governor is a good politician. I will concede that.
Matt Huffman said the $2,500 per child tax credit, the no taxes on diapers and wipes, will help reverse Ohio's declining birth rate. Is that really what parents are considering when they're deciding to start a family or have a third kid? I don't know. It seems a bit of a stretch.
It's hard. I think honestly, childcare costs were a bigger consideration for us. If we had had a third kid, I have two. They're wonderful. We love them. But there's also like childcare costs probably would have meant one of us had to quit working. But there's also like the question of like, do I want to move from man to zone defense? Which is just like a fundamental question that has nothing to do with the economics of having a third.
That was my line when we had twins and could have had triplets. I didn't want the zone. Julie, what will lawmakers do with this budget now? There was no widespread income tax cut here.
Right.
There was the tax credit and the sales tax tweaks, but there's no across-the-board income tax cut.
Well, so it needs to go first to the House, become a House bill, and then Stevens, who is our new House Speaker and has this very fractured caucus, has said that he's not necessarily sure he supports eliminating an income tax. He is a little more measured there, and so I think you might see some of DeWine's policies dialed back at the end of the day in the House.
Desiree, the expansion of the private school vouchers to families of four making up to $111,000 a year, that's still kind of middle class, two parents making 50 grand. Is that good? Does it give those children, those families more opportunities?
Absolutely not. We're seeing public school funding diverted away from public schools every single day. And every time we take dollars out of public schools and divert them somewhere else, the vast majority of Ohio's most vulnerable lose out on a quality education. And we're seeing ripple effects of that. Ohio is ranked very low when it comes to public education because of the dollars being stripped out of public schools. And I'm a graduate of public schools, and I can speak to the detriment when it comes to not having high quality textbooks or teachers who want to stay because they can afford the job. So we're seeing a lot when it comes to public education.
The Senate President and others have said that the school funding remains the same for the public schools. It's just adding money to the voucher program.
Let us not forget, less than 60 days ago during lame duck, the legislature gave $1.2 billion in additional money, not one-time money, additional money to all school systems across the state to be doled out. We just announced this week another $68 million for school resource officers and the like. So we are giving more and more and more to our K through 12, which is a good thing. There shouldn't be any complaints with it, but to say that we're underfunding them is nonsense.
All right, while the governor talked a lot about education funding, vouchers, and third grade reading proficiency, he failed to mention how he soon could be in charge of Ohio education policy. It's the state Senate's #1 priority. Senate Bill 1 would take education policy making away from the State Board of Education and give it to a director appointed by the governor. Supporters say it will streamline decisions over curriculum. Opponents say it'll give parents and teachers less of a voice through the school board. Anna Staver, governors have wanted this for decades. Does it happen this time, and how quickly will it happen?
I think it's entirely possible it happens this time. So Stevens, the House Speaker, says that he's supportive of it. The governor's supportive of it. Matt Huffman, the Senate President. So you have the big three on board. It's entirely possible that it becomes part of the budget because, we're putting together how much we need to give the Ohio Department of Education when we may actually fundamentally change how the Ohio Department of Education works. Huffman has said he wants to get this done pretty early, either in the budget or before the budget. I think that's a very real possibility.
Julie, the Education Association, the president of the teachers union, was on WRC Radio this week, and they didn't take a stand. They weren't opposed to this. They weren't in favor of it. They just want good policy making. Does that surprise you?
That surprises me a little bit, but I do feel that maybe the time has come. I mean, there is a generalized feel that the education policies in Ohio, should be more visionary and shouldn't have to be like, every bill has to change every way that it goes on a bill by bill basis. There should be some ability of a governor to make a vision. But you know what, the way that our state school board is structured has allowed for diverse voices in a way that this policy would not. We're a very Republican state now, and that board has got some members that are being elected at large or in districts where there are some Democratic voices.
Desiree, that board is 19 members, 8 of which are appointed by the governor. I've talked to educators who have been frustrated that curriculum changes cannot get through that board because they're short 1 or 2 votes. Would it not be better to have one point person setting the policy for 4 or 8 years and getting the curriculum passed?
Anytime we take power away from people and put it into a politician's hand, it's a bad idea. I think the current system has a lot of checks and balances, and it's frustrating, but that's the process, that's bureaucracy. And so by giving all power to the Republican governor, who may or may not have the best interests of the Democratic cities around the state, are they going to have the same resources and the same access as they do right now? And so, yeah, it's gridlock, but that's a part of the process. We do need some changes, but I don't know that allowing the power to be poured all into the governor's office is the answer.
Mike, as we saw in the State of the State address, Mike DeWine's pretty middle of the road, reasonable Republican, but you could see how a more conservative governor, we see it in Florida, you know, dictating what can be taught in the curriculum as far as LGBT issues or racial issues. You could see a progressive governor being more in line with teaching progressive things in schools. Does it not open up curriculum and education to the whims of the person in the governor's office?
Excellent question, Mike, and the answer is no, because the way Senate Bill 1's written, it gives more authority to the legislature to have checks and balances on the governor and the governor's appointee, regardless if the governor's a Democrat or a Republican. So at the end of the day, whoever this person will be, the czar of education of Ohio, has to be approved by the Ohio Senate. So that doesn't exist currently. Obviously, this whole makeup doesn't exist, but at the end of the day, we're not taking away the power from the people, because the people elect the governor too, and the people elect a Republican governor. I don't know when the next Democrat will get elected, but the people are still voting for the CEO of our state. And if they don't like the job he or she's doing, they can vote him out when the next time goes around. So at the end of the day, this bill, Senate Bill 1, actually provides more checks and balances to our education system, because nobody knows anything about the school board. I mean, who are you going to call at the state school board? We don't know. All control remains local, and this just puts accountability somewhere in the process.
And the Constitution requires a State Board of Education and a superintendent.
Yes.
Would there be a legal challenge to this if it goes through?
No, because it keeps them. It says that we have to have a state board and we have to have a superintendent, but it doesn't specify what they have to do. And this would leave oversight over teacher revocation, like their licenses. So if a teacher is accused of misconduct, the state board would still go through the material and decide whether or not they should be a teacher. The state superintendent would be more of an advisory role to the state board and a liaison to this new director. So I think there's enough there that's being left behind, but I'm not saying there won't be a legal challenge. I just think that the Constitution doesn't specify what the board has to do.
All right, homeschooling in Ohio caught the nation's attention this week. Vice and the Huffington Post were the first to report that some parents of homeschooled kids in Ohio were using neo-Nazi educational materials. The materials were reportedly made by a couple from Upper Sandusky. The lesson plans being supplied included anti-Semitic conspiracies, cursive lessons using Adolf Hitler quotes, and racist and inaccurate content about Martin Luther King Jr. The distribution channel has shut down, but the story raises questions about who is watching over kids who are homeschooled. Mike Gonadakis, a lot of fear on the right about indoctrination in our schools. This would qualify, I would think, in homeschooling. Is enough being done to stop this from happening?
I mean, probably, maybe, I don't know, but what happened was disgusting and reprehensible, and I'm glad we should all be glad that it was shut down. Any type of racism is unacceptable in our schools, our public square, of course. But at the end of the day, homeschooling makes up 2.8% of our K through 12 education. 51,000 total kids in the state of Ohio. We live in a state of 11 million people are homeschooled. We do have standards. We do have oversight to a degree of homeschooling, but it's parents' constitutional rights. If they want to teach their kids at home, they have to disclose what the curriculum is, what books they're using. Maybe the system worked in this case because they found out this disgusting group, whatever their name was, or these two parents up in Upper Sandusky, they got caught, for lack of a better term, and they're out. That's a good thing. So the system worked.
Desiree, should there be more oversight of the homeschooling system?
Look, I think this couple got caught by a really good journalist, and we're seeing extremism and indoctrination really fly high on the right. this is not surprising to me. I mean, look what we're seeing from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. And also we're pulling out resources from public schools and not investing in a way that's strengthening, that allows parents to have security in sending their kids to the local public schools. And so I think what we ought to do is start changing the way we talk about our local school systems, strengthen it with funding, with high quality teachers, and hopefully we get more people to opt to send their kids to public schools.
But there are parents, Julie, that they feel that they can do a better job of schooling their kids, safer, religious reasons, things like that. It's a small number, but it's a growing number in many cases.
Right. I mean, it is popular on both the right and the left. Not popular, as Mike says, it's a small group, but I mean, it is used by those of varying political stripes who just want to either they have an educator in the house or they have a decision. They make a decision monetarily or for other reasons, or depending where they want to live and what they think of the school district there. I agree with Desiree that it was journalists and not the system in Ohio that caught this. I mean, from what I read of the investigative reporting, it was very difficult to figure out who these folks were, all the way down to hints on what their dog's name was and going to local dog license databases and that kind of thing.
Interesting. And any talk of tightening up homeschooling in the many education bills that are?
Democrats have expressed an interest in doing that, particularly because Senate Bill 1 changes some of the assessment requirements for homeschoolers. And they are sort of asking those questions. I don't know whether it'll result in any changes, but one of the challenges, I think, I talked to actually Representative Riordan McClain. He lives in Upper Sandusky. His wife homeschools their 5 children. He had never heard of this couple. But one of the points that he made is, you give an outline of your curriculum to the state. Now, they don't evaluate it. It's for informational purposes only. He's like, but I really don't think that that couple, there's an investigation by ODE, but I would be really shocked if that couple put down Hitler lessons into their curriculum, right? I don't think that they're reporting it. And that's a really difficult challenge, right? That curriculum, in the investigative reporting said there were conversations about when to tell your kids these things, how to tell them about basically stranger danger for people who don't believe the way we do. So there's an acknowledgement of how the greater community feels. And I just think those parents probably weren't being honest about what they were teaching to the state of Ohio.
And homeschool kids do have to be tested, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But you could pass U.S. history and be a neo-Nazi. Those two things are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah. All right. The Larry Householder trial was basically a one-man show this week, a G-man. The FBI agent who led the investigation into the alleged bribery scheme laid out evidence for the prosecution. Agent Blaine Wetzel shared text messages and emails and secret recordings about the behind-the-scenes efforts to get the billion-dollar First Energy bailout passed. Prosecutors even presented a picture First Energy executives shared after the bailout bill passed. It showed the First Energy Stadium logo superimposed on the State House. The jury has not seen this picture yet, but the judge is still deciding whether jurors should. Julie Carr Smythe, the old saying is, you don't want to see how laws are made. It's like making sausage. This is really showing us how that sausage is made.
Yes. Fascinating, absolutely, to see all the behind-the-scenes texts and maneuvering and the lobbyists. One of my favorite little nuggets of the week was that the Larry Householder was getting some people back for the vote on the state plane, which had been ordered by DeWine's chief of staff. And then we see the message where the lobbyist says, basically, that was Mike Dawson's wife. Boom. Because Mike Dawson was working for First Energy and his wife was the chief of staff. Now,
Mike DeWine, yeah.
Right, and DeWine spokesperson says, lobbyists brag all the time. This will also be an argument that the Householder folks make they have made. That, lobbyists say a lot of things. Neil Clark maybe said a lot of things that were exaggerations.
It is eye-opening, Mike, but as I read the text messages, I could easily see making the argument this is just, it may not be pretty, but it's hardball politics. It didn't cross the line to illegal.
Yeah, the jury, the prosecution has to prove their case to the jury, of course. And, when you make sausage at the State House, nobody wants to see how it's made. Does it mean it's illegal pursuant to federal state law? I don't know. There are some nasty text messages in there. How could you put that in writing? Or why would you even say that? But at the end of the day, is it illegal? So there's a court of public opinion. Mr. Householder's guilty, but that's not the standard, thankfully, in the United States. So he has to be found guilty in a court of law. I'm not sure the prosecution's there yet.
Desiree, we kind of all suspected this was happening, all knew it was happening, but to see it in black and white, to see it in text messages, to see the memes of the logo on the State House, it's pretty incredible.
It is pretty incredible how the Republicans got away with this corruption scandal politically in the state. And so what I'm curious is what the end result will be from the jurors and how that either inflames the court of public opinion or not. And also the other names, the other Republicans who were involved in this scandal, what else is going to come out as more evidence is introduced, as more witnesses are put on the stand. We're going to see a lot of hot takes in the coming days.
Dave Yost, the Attorney General, his name came up in Friday's testimony, a text message. It was hearsay. It wasn't him in particular, but they were saying that he had mixed feelings about it, but supported it because Matt Borges supported it.
Yeah, so Matt Borges is the other person on trial with Larry Householder that sometimes we forget he's also on trial. And he worked with Dave Yost. They had a long-term relationship. And the question is, did Matt Borges cross a legal line when he tried to persuade Dave Yost not to approve a referendum, which would have potentially reversed House Bill 6, right? If voters said, no, we don't want to do this, the law wouldn't have gone into effect. And there are some questions about that and whether what Matt did constitutes this racketeering charge. And I think we're finally starting to see the foundation perhaps be laid for that case. And one thing I would point out is that Blaine Wetzel, this FBI agent, he's the first substantive witness to be called. So we're still very early on in this process. And we have two people who have pled guilty who we still have to hear from.
Yeah, 2 weeks down, at least 6 to go probably. It looks like advocates are taking the first steps of a campaign to change the way Ohio draws legislative districts. Helping lead the way is former Ohio Supreme Court Chief Justice Maureen O'Connor. She's told the Columbus Metropolitan Club this week it's not a matter of if a new system goes before voters, but when.
Now that I'm retired, I can be involved with, efforts to maybe pass another constitutional amendment. And this time, the constitutional amendment depoliticizes the redistricting commission. There would be no elected officials on the redistricting commission in an ideal format.
Of course, it was O'Connor's court that several times ruled the districts unfair and unconstitutional. She says they soon will write drafts of the amendment with the hopes of putting it on the ballot in 2024. Desiree Timms, looks like this is underway. She's a Republican, but I assume Democrats are fully embracing her stance on this.
Absolutely. We are thrilled that someone on the other side has common sense solutions to this problem. We have to take politicians out of it because right now we still have gerrymandered districts in Ohio. It is an unfair, unearned majority, and how sad that Republicans got away with ignoring the Supreme Court's order over and over again. And so I think what we're going to see from Maureen O'Connor is she's going to lock arms with like-minded allies to make sure we pass something that allows the people to pick their representatives and not the other way around.
Mike Konadakis, this was passed in conservative-leaning states, Iowa, Arizona, Michigan. Is it going to pass here in Ohio?
No, it's not, Mike. This is Maureen O'Connor's last attempt to be relevant, and the voters of Ohio this past November demonstrated that she's irrelevant because they elected not one, but 3 conservative Republican justices, 2 of which wrote opposing opinions in her redistricting claim that our maps are unconstitutional. In fact, Justice Fisher, and Justice DeWine were very vocal and vehement about their opposition to Maureen O'Connor, and they both easily got reelected. The voters spoke, they agreed with them, and they'll do the same thing with this. Look, at the end of the day, is Maureen going to pick what this commission is? It's going to be up to her who's going to take away our ability to elect our representatives to decide what our map should look like. Voters will reject it.
Julie, redistricting has been a problem for 200 and some odd years, but it seems to be more of a top-of-mind issue for voters now. If you're going to do it, you have to do it in the next couple of years, right?
Yes, I think that the folks who have advocated, and this goes all the way from Eric Holder running a huge national effort to make people understand why it's important. He's on the Democratic side, but we saw across the country national themes around it that allowed people to realize its importance for the first time.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch. Let's get to our final off-the-record parting shots, and Desiree Timms, you're up first.
Yeah, I think we are watching with our popcorn the infighting on the Republican side with the third caucus. So I'm very curious to see what comes out of the legislature this year as we look to hopefully passing bills that actually help people. But we'll see, because the Republicans are just ripping each other apart. It's great to watch.
Mike.
Mike, there's a false narrative going around that the Republicans are trying to take away people's right to vote or their right to decide what their Constitution should look like. In fact, there's no constitutional authority or legal authority for the legislature to touch our Constitution. All they can do is say, hey, 8 million voters in Ohio, what do you want your Constitution to be? What standard it is? So we need to stop saying that and just let, I don't know why people are so afraid to let voters vote on what our standard should be, 60%, 55%, or whatever that may be.
All right. Anna.
The Columbus Dispatch actually did a really great deep dive this week. It's called Preying on Patients, and they took a look at, we all know about Strauss and what happened at Ohio State in terms of like a doctor preying on patients, but they looked at decades of records and found hundreds of examples where the state medical board wasn't intervening with like long-term complaints of sexual harassment and assault by doctors here in Ohio. And I think it's definitely worth a read.
And Julie.
Mike brought up the one-time spending on one-time projects, and I'm going to be most curious on that, whether that COVID federal money gets used for important things and whether it gets credit for the people in Congress who actually supported it.
All right. My off-the-record comment, looking way ahead, in 24, we could have 2 redistricting amendments on the ballot, one passed by lawmakers that would only need a simple majority, and one passed by advocates that would need a 60% majority if that change is made this year in the Constitution approval process. That would be interesting. Columbus on the Record, that's it for this week. Check us out online, wosu.org/COTR, or on the PBS video app. For our crew and our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.